Claire hadn't slept more than 4 hours a night in weeks, not since the diagnosis, not since the doctors started using words like progressive and irreversible in voices that were soft but heavy enough to break her heart anyway. Her mother, Margaret, had always been the strong one, the woman who baked pies during thunderstorms, who held neighbors' newborns like they were her own. Now she sat in room 314, hands trembling, eyes drifting farther away each day, as if her mind were already searching for a place where the pain couldn't follow. And Claire was tired, not just in her body, but in her soul. The rain had been falling for 3 days straight when Claire walked into the hospital cafeteria with her untouched coffee growing cold in her hands. She didn't sit. She never did anymore. Instead, she leaned against the far wall near the vending machines, watching steam rise from the lid like it might carry her thoughts away if she stared long enough. No one looked at her twice. Nurses rushed past with clipboards and tired eyes. Orderlies joked quietly over lukewarm sandwiches. A janitor mopped the linoleum floor in slow, practiced arcs. To them, Claire was just another ghost haunting the halls, present but invisible, worn down by something they didn't have time to ask about. She had tried to be enough. She rearranged her work schedule, canceled plans, drove 2 hours every weekend just to sit by the bed and read old letters aloud. But exhaustion had carved hollows beneath her eyes, and silence had settled between them like dust on forgotten furniture. The worst part wasn't the illness. It was the loneliness that came with it. Friends sent flowers, then stopped calling. Her brother offered vague promises. "I'll come next month, I swear," that dissolved like sugar in cold tea. Even her therapist, kind as she was, sometimes said, "Have you considered respite care?" As if love could be outsourced. That morning, Claire had snapped at a nurse for adjusting her mother's blanket without asking. It wasn't the blanket. It was the assumption that no one was really there, watching, caring. Afterward, shame pooled in her stomach like acid. She'd locked herself in a supply closet for 10 minutes, pressing her forehead against metal shelves until her pulse slowed. Now, standing in the cafeteria, she felt nothing but numb. Not grief, not anger, just the dull ache of being unseen. Then he walked in. He wasn't what she expected. Not young, not old, somewhere in the quiet middle. Salt and pepper hair, a worn corduroy jacket, hands tucked into his pockets like he was trying not to take up space. He bought a cup of tea from the machine, then paused. Not at the tables full of chatter, not at the windows overlooking the parking lot, but right where Claire stood. "You look like you haven't eaten," he said gently, holding out a packaged muffin he'd just pulled from the rack. Claire blinked. "I'm fine." He didn't move. "My wife used to say that too, right before she passed." He said it without pity, just fact, like naming the weather. She'd stand in corners just like this, holding coffee she never drank. Something cracked open in Claire's chest. Not because of his words, but because he had seen her, really seen her. "I don't even know your name," she whispered. "Walter," he said, "and you're Claire, room 314. She stiffened. "How do you—" "I volunteer here on Tuesdays and Thursdays. Push the book cart. Your mom always asks for poetry. Emily Dickinson. Says it reminds her of her garden back home." He smiled faintly. "You've been reading to her from that tattered paperback with the coffee stain on page 23. Claire's breath hitched. No one had noticed that book. No one had remembered her mother loved poetry. They sat, not together, not apart, on opposite ends of a vinyl booth, the muffin between them like a peace offering.
Walter didn't ask how she was holding up, didn't offer advice, didn't give empty reassurances. Instead, he told her about his wife's last spring, how she'd insisted on planting tulip bulbs, even though she could barely stand, how she laughed when the wind stole her scarf, how she whispered, "Don't forget to water the roses," the night before she died. "She knew I'd forget," he said quietly, but she said it anyway, because saying it meant she still believed in tomorrow.
Claire finally ate the muffin. It tasted like cardboard and kindness. And for the first time in weeks, she didn't feel so alone in the room. Not because the fear had gone away, not because the road ahead suddenly felt easier, but because someone had noticed her pain and chosen to sit with it. Walter sipped his tea in silence. Claire held her cup a little closer to her chest. Outside the cafeteria window, the rain slowed, softening into a gentle rhythm against the glass. And in that quiet moment, without realizing it, Claire took her first small step toward the strength she would one day give to others. She didn't know it yet, but this wasn't just kindness she was receiving. It was kindness she was learning how to pass on. Thank you for listening to this story. If it touched your heart in any way, maybe someone you care about needs to hear it too. Feel free to share it with them. And if you enjoy stories like this, you're always welcome here.